Support Name Explain on Patreon for ad-free videos, exclusive podcasts and blog posts, and to help choose what names get explained. Click the link in the description. In East Sussex, in the southeast of England, on the island of Great Britain, lies a small town. Wikipedia explains how it's almost 20 miles square in size and has a population of roughly 6,700 people. It's about 50 miles away from London and 30 miles away from Brighton. TripAdvisor explains that the best things to do there are to visit some of the local museums, historic sites, and areas of nature around it. Wikipedia also states that it's a popular commuter town for people to travel into from London. Now, if you haven't guessed from this not too thrilling description of the town, it's pretty much like any other small settlement you'll find in the southeast of England and across the entirety of the UK. However, there is something somewhat unique about this town. One thing that interestingly separates it from the rest, that of course being its name, which I'm sure you're not too shocked to hear. This is Name Explain after all. Now, this village doesn't have a particularly long or complex name like we've covered recently, nor does it have a silly or rude sounding name, like Britain is rather renowned for. Its name is simply a common word in the English language, one most of us will be familiar with and have probably used it in one way or another, either literally or figuratively. This town in East Sussex is simply called Battle. Battle is a word which entered the English language via the Old French bataille, which means not only physical combat but also inner turmoil, which are also the ways in which we use the word ourselves today. This Old French word comes from the late Latin batulia, meaning exercises of soldiers, which comes from the Latin word batuli, meaning to beat, and is also where we get the verb batter from, as in to strike something repeatedly. You know, I never actually noticed that battle and batter sound similar, let alone thought about if they came from the same root or not. But why is this town called Battle? Well, it isn't any coincidence. It's not like the name comes from some old English word meaning something else entirely that now sounds like the word battle we know, nor is it named after a tribe of people who once lived there or a geographical feature, like how so many other parts of the world got their names. This town is literally named after a battle. In fact, it is named after perhaps the most famous battle to have ever taken place on this island. Which battle is that? Well, if you haven't guessed by now, I'll give you one more hint. As well as being close to London and Brighton, there's another town that's extremely close too, that being Hastings. Yep. The town of Battle is named after the infamous Battle of Hastings. The Battle of Hastings really is one of those defining moments in British history, and truth be told, this video is just an excuse for me to gush about this fight. But thanks to the town of Battle, we can give this video an etymology-centric lick of paint to justify it being a Name Explain video. Though I have seen some of you guys ask if I could make more general history related videos, as opposed to just focusing on names. So this is that, I guess. And funnily enough, in my recent Cockney video, I gave a way oversimplified retelling of this battle. There's only fair we retell this battle in a tad more detail. Hope you enjoy. A great place to start is with the two key players in this fight, those being Harold Godwinson, King of England, and William, Duke of Normandy, who, spoiler alert, would go on to become William the Conqueror. However, before these two we had Edward the Confessor as King of England. This king had no children, meaning he had no true heirs to the throne, leaving people in not just England but across Europe wanting to fill his boots once he died. Harold was born sometime in the 1020s. His father was Earl of Wessex, and this was a title he took on in 1053. As Earl of Wessex, he was seen as the second most powerful person in England, just below the king himself, Edward the Confessor. So of course, without any children, the logical step was for Harold to become king when Edward died. However, at this time there was a more Norman influence growing in the land too, with the Normans being from part of modern day France, which is fittingly called Normandy. I'm sure you've heard of it. By this time, William was firmly the Duke of Normandy, though this was an easy ascension for him. William became Duke at the age of just 8 years old and was the illegitimate son of a previous Duke. So when he took over the land, there was much revolt and anarchy. It was only in his teenage years he finally got a firm control over his land, and as he grew older, he built up a close relationship with Edward the Confessor, King of England. They had a distant family tie, and Edward was so fond of William, they even promised him the English throne upon his death. And that death came on the 5th of January 1066. Yet despite Edward the Confessor promising William of Normandy that throne, guess who took the throne for themselves instead? You guessed it, Harold Godwinson. As mentioned, he was the second most powerful man in England, and with the most powerful now dead, Harold saw it as his time to take the throne. However, this wasn't just Harold claiming the throne for himself, as the WITAN Council supported him too. The WITAN Council were a council of lords who took part in deciding who should be king next when there was no clear path. So having them on your side was pretty darn good. And I imagine they most likely knew that Edward had made the oath with William of Normandy to become king after his death, yet still denied him the throne. It's safe to say that with all this, William was pretty darn upset. He'd been promised the throne by the previous king, and not only had Harold simply claimed it for himself anyway, the WITAN council denied to respect the oath laid out by the now dead king. Enraged, William took the matter into his own hands. If he wouldn't be given England as it was promised to him, he would simply take England for himself. And this real-life Game of Thrones style situation laid out the foundation for the infamous Battle of Hastings in 1066. But it wasn't just William who saw the death of Edward the Confessor as their chance to claim the land too. Edward's death and lack of true heir made something of a power vacuum in England, and others too saw it as their chance, most noticeably Harald Hardrada, who was the king of Norway at the time. This Harald, spelt with an A, wanted England too. He was actually aided in this by a man named Tostig, who was Harold Godwinson's brother and former Duke of Northumbria before being ousted by his own people, so was bitter and angry at his former nation and more than happy to help the Norwegian king. Hardrada landed in York on the 25th of September 1066. England's Harold had only been king since January and was in London when this happened. London and York are pretty far away from each other. It takes around 3 hours to drive there today, so it's pretty remarkable that Harold and his men arrived there in just 4 days, which was super quick at the time. Though during this journey, Godwinson was aware that William was planning to invade the south, yet he still made the choice to secure York from the Viking invaders. Hardrada, Tostig, and 300 ships full of 11,000 Vikings arrived in the north of England. They were sure that Godwinson wouldn't be there, so when Godwinson was there, he and his men were completely off guard, and this gave Godwinson the advantage. This battle is now known as the Battle of Stamford Bridge. It would have been a fierce battle, yet despite the might of the Vikings, both Hardrada and Tostig were defeated and their Viking army all but destroyed. Of the 300 ships that sailed from Norway, only 24 sailed back. It was a tough, tiring fight, but Harold Godwinson and his men made sure that Yorkshire wouldn't fall to the northern invaders. As I said, this battle took place on the 25th of September 1066, and while I'm sure they would have wanted to rest up and celebrate their victory, that was not on the cards, as just 4 days later, on the 28th of September 1066, William of Normandy and his men arrived in the southeast in Sussex. Harold knew that this was a risk he took when leaving the south to fend off the Vikings, so tired from their previous battles, Harold and his men travelled back to the south of England to defend their land from the Norman invaders. About 2 weeks later, on the 13th of October 1066, the armies of Harold and William were encamped within sight of each other in Sussex by the settlement of Hastings. Both armies, however, thought they had some sort of advantage. Harold and the English had camped on the higher ground, which is often seen as the favoured position in battles, while William and the Normans were well rested and had been in the land for about 2 weeks at that point. The next morning, on the 14th of October 1066 at 9 AM, the battle would commence. The English held a strong defensive position and formed a wall of shields thought to have been around half a mile long around their ground. Their hope was to take the defensive and take out the Normans while still in this position. To combat this, the Normans had to ride uphill to be within bowshot of the English to pick them off. Things came to something of a stalemate. The Normans weren't getting any further and neither were the English. Luck would come to help the Normans, however, in the form of some rather bad news. Well, news they thought was bad anyway, as rumours started to circulate that William had been killed. Upon hearing this news, groups of Normans fled in panic upon hearing their duke was dead, and those fleeing Normans were chased by English who broke line. William was of course not dead, however, but upon seeing that this rumour caused the English to break formation, he used it to his advantage, and the Normans used this fleeing tactic multiple times to break up the English troops. This led the Normans to gaining the advantage, as the hill they fought on became more covered with fallen bodies. As the day was coming to an end, the Normans gave one final push to oust the fallen English defences, and it was during this final assault that King Harold of England was finally killed. There are conflicting stories as to how this actually happened. Some say he was taken out by 4 Norman knights, but of course the popular story is that he was killed with an arrow to the right eye. Either way, without a leader, the English forces panicked and fled, and after a day of battling, William and the Normans were seen as the victors in this battle. He eventually took on the title of William the Conqueror and became King of England, and England, Great Britain, and the United Kingdom as a whole as it would become, will set on a path that would change it forever. And that's the Battle of Hastings. Though I'm no military history expert, and I'm sure there are far better explanations of the battle you can find out there. But let's go back to that town of Battle. Why is this town called Battle when the fight itself is called the Battle of Hastings? This name implies that the battle happened at Hastings. It's not called the Battle of Battle. Well, that's because the town of Battle was established way after 1066. So at the time of the Battle of Hastings, the land where this town now is was just empty. And as Hastings was the nearest settlement, the battle was named after it. So yes, the town of Battle was literally built over the battlefield of the Battle of Hastings. Hence why it has the rights to be called Battle, even though the battle itself isn't named after the town of Battle. As I said, it would take some time for the town of Battle to pop up, a few hundred years in fact. In the immediate aftermath of the Battle of Hastings, however, William vowed to build an abbey in the battlefield where his victory took place. This would go on to be the Abbey of St. Martin and was built between 1070 and 1094, so pretty soon after the battle in the grand scheme of things. The legends even say that the high altar of St. Martin's was placed where Harold Godwinson was killed. It wouldn't be until the 17th century when a town started to spring up around the abbey. This was a regular occurrence in England and around the world. Settlements would pop up centered around the church or abbey or some religious site. What really brought people to this site, however, was a gunpowder mill that opened in 1676. This mill supposedly made some of the finest gunpowder in all of Europe, so many people came to the mill to acquire it and set up home there. It was supposedly gunpowder from this mill that a certain guy used in a certain plot. It's very fitting that a town founded on warfare became known across Europe for creating a product used extensively in warfare. Nevertheless, thanks to the abbey, the mill, and all the people arriving, a town was eventually set up, and that town was given the name of Battle to commemorate the battle that took place where the settlement now stands. And it seems that gunpowder is no longer made in the town, and there haven't been any particularly big battles in the town of Battle recently. Though despite seeming like just another small English town for people who commute to London to live in, this town has a seriously rich history, and where it now stands played a vital role in England and the English language becoming what it is today. And all of this is encapsulated as a constant reminder in the town's name of Battle. Places named after battles was suggested by Kent Dirkex, and thanks to their suggestion, they will now be honoured as Name Explained's patron saint of places named after battles. Do you have a good idea for somewhere that's name could be covered in a Name Explained video? If so, then please consider donating on Patreon. Just $1 a month helps keep the channel running and earns you a weekly chance to suggest somewhere to be turned into a video, and you too could be a Name Explained Patreon saint. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explained on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explained, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explained. Hello all, and thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explained. You can find me on Twitter, I'm at NameExplainedYT. On Instagram, I'm also NameExplainedYT, and on Facebook, just search Name Explained. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.